Hey everybody, we had to change locations for this next one. I actually had to delete Facebook and reapply it to my phone for one reason or another. I have no idea why. So anyway, let's move on. I'm a little frustrated because I did the entire Bible study on my computer thinking I was live and I was not. So, all right. Like I said, we're going to do Mary Magdalene. And what I want you to know about Mary Magdalene is that she was very special. And a lot of people don't understand her story. They've heard a lot of, well, they're just incorrect things. So to start with, Mary's name, Mary Magdalene, comes from the place where she lived. She lived in a city called Magdala, which was a city in Galilee. So Magdalene wasn't her last name. It was just where she came from. So just FYI. What I think is kind of cool is out of thousands of people that Jesus, his life touched while he was here, she's one of them that they talk about. And her story is so awesome that I just have to share. I know I did Eve first and then I'm doing this one. And I know that probably seems weird, but her story is awesome. So, okay. There is one thing I want to just get out there because it's been brought to my attention multiple times and it is incorrect and I want to squash it while I have a chance. She was not Jesus's wife. She was not his lover. She was not anything except for a follower of Christ. And the Bible proves that. There is absolutely no physical evidence in any of the literature of the Jews or in the Bible that suggests that she was anything more than just a follower of Jesus. Okay. And I know where the misconception started. I actually tracked that down because it was something that bothered me. And it actually started in the 6th century with a man named Pope John. Yeah. Anyway, one of the popes. And he had preached a message about this and it just spread like wildfire. In 1969, the Catholic Church itself renounced this belief and admitted that there was no text in the Bible to support this belief. So even the Catholics are saying that this is incorrect now. So just FYI, I wanted to squash that because it's just one of those things. All right, so when we first meet Mary Magdalene, she is brought out and literally thrown at his feet. And I'm sure that she was probably either completely naked or partially naked because that the Bible says that they caught her in the act of adultery and they wanted to stone her. That is what you did to an adulteress. You stoned them. And so this woman is naked or half naked. She's thrown at the feet of a man that she's never seen before. There are men screaming all around her that they're going to kill her. And, this is one of those tests that they did for Jesus. They wanted to see what he was going to say. And instead of doing anything that they expected, Jesus knelt in the dirt and he drew in the dirt. And the only thing I can think of that he drew in the dirt would have been a line. And I do not think that he ever even looked at her because it would have been inappropriate for him to do so. So I think that the drawing that it talks about in the dirt was the line. And basically, he told them, if any of you are without sin, cast the first stone. And he waited. So, in my mind, I'm picturing this poor woman who has gotten caught in the act. So she's guilty. She knows she's guilty, and she knows she deserves death. Okay, she knew what the punishment was when she was doing it. She is on the ground. They have drug her there. So I'm imagining a woman with skint knees, skint places on her body, bruises where they have manhandled her to get her there. And she is kneeling in the dirt. And all I can think of is she is hunkered down in like an earthquake position where she's covering her head. And she's just waiting on that first stone to hit her. You know, you brace for stuff. When you know it's going to hurt, you know, you everybody does it. You hunker in and you just, you know, you're waiting on it. And I can imagine every little muscle in her body was tense because she's thinking, I'm fixing to die and it is going to hurt. So she is there. And I don't know how many minutes would have passed. I'm sure several before it got really quiet. And I, in my mind's eye, I can almost see her peeking with one eye and starting to look around, and maybe those hands coming down, and she's looking. And the only one that's left is this man that they had thrown her at the feet of. And I don't think he's looking at her. And he asks her a question. He says, woman, where are your accusers? And she's looking around. She says, I don't have any. And he says, you're right. And I don't accuse you either. Basically, he used the word condemn. And so he looked at her and he forgave her. The other ones didn't forgive her. They just walked away. There was no forgiveness in them. The forgiveness came from Jesus. And Mary understood something right then that most people did not understand for a long time. But she got it. Forgiveness equals life. The forgiveness that he was able to give her saved her life because he knew that these other people could not cast a stone without being a liar. And these men were supposed to be holy men. So, I mean, everybody, all of them knew. They knew that they could not cast a stone. All right, so I'm going to give you some scriptures, and you'll have to bear with me because I'm kind of all over the place with these scriptures. But I do have a point that I'm trying to make. So, all right, we're going to start in Luke 8, chapter 8, verse 2. And it says, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. It doesn't list another time where Jesus cast anything out of her, but it says that he did. So in my mind, I'm thinking that when he forgave her that very first time, he also cast those demons out of her. They had to go because you can't have the Spirit of God in the same place as a demon. It's just not going to go. God's Spirit is going to overcome it every single time. All right, so back up just a little bit. And Luke 7, verses 37 and 39, they're having this meal Jesus has been invited to a meal, and there is a Pharisee there. And he is just looking at her just like all the, just like I can imagine all the men that wanted to stone her. And it says that that he condemns her for being a sinner. And he feels like Jesus is doing wrong. He says, if he's a prophet, then letting her anoint him is sinful, because you weren't allowed to touch unclean things if you were a prophet or if you were a priest. You were not supposed to be touching, eating, partaking, nothing of an unclean thing. And because she had been a harlot, it doesn't matter that God had forgiven her. Man had not forgiven her. Because she had been a harlot, they didn't feel like Jesus should be letting her touch him. All right. So what was she doing to touch him that bothered that Pharisee so much? We find that out in John. John 12:3 says, Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, N-A-R-D, I don't know what that is, but evidently it's expensive, and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. I know there's another verse somewhere else that says that she was weeping as she did it. So there were tears along with that hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. So according to verse 3, where Judas, the miser, comes in, he says that the perfume that she just put on his feet would have brought 300 denarii. And I had to look that up because I didn't know what that was. Denarii are a form of money, and they contain 3 grams of silver apiece. And so if you do the math, she poured $216 worth of perfume on his feet. And that just ticked them off. They did not like that. It bothered those people who were worldly and not spiritual. Anybody that was trying to walk in the Spirit would have seen that what she was doing was an act of worship. It was an act of love. It was an act of servitude. She was trying to make this man know how much she appreciated what he did, how much she loved him because he loved her first. She could feel that. You know when somebody loves you. You know when somebody cares about you. It shows in the way that they talk to you, the way that they treat you. Jesus didn't treat her like a harlot. He treated her like his daughter. He loved her. So you have this place where she's anointing his feet. And we really don't see her again until a little bit later, when it talks about who is at the foot of the cross. There was only one disciple that showed up to the crucifixion. One was brave enough to show up. But Mary Magdalene was there. In Matthew 27, chapter 27, verses 56 and 57, it says, there were also many women there, looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, which is where he started his ministry, ministering to him. They ministered to him. They fed him. They made sure he had what he needed. Among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. So it lists off a few women, I'm sure it's not all of them, that are standing there, and they are watching this man that they've ministered to for 3 years, that they love, being tortured and beaten and hung on a cross. I can only imagine the weeping that was happening right then, because they loved him and they knew he was suffering. Makes me want to cry. After this, you hear about her again. And she is so important in the resurrection story. And not a lot of people talk about her. But man, is she wicked important, okay? I want you to understand how important this woman was to that resurrection story. So it says that Mark 15:47 says that Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid. So these women followed him all the way to the tomb. They wanted to know where his body was going. They followed him all the way there. They had followed him his entire ministry, and they were going to go with him until the last possible second when they couldn't. What do we do today? We go with our members, our family members, to the last possible second because we want to be with him right up to the end. She did that. She loved him. And so it was custom for them to be able to anoint the body with spices and things like that. And it kept it from, it helped preserve it, and it made it not so stinky. And so these women were prepared to go and do that job. That is what they did. Okay. So I'm going to read to you all the places that it talks to you and tells you that she was the one, the first one, heading to that tomb. All right. Mark 16, no. I'm going to come back to that one. I don't want to start there. Let's see. Yeah, Mark 16:1. When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint his body. John 20, verse 1. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. And so it tells us that she sees that that tomb is empty. Okay. Now I'm going to read a section of verses, and I want you to really understand that John tells the story better than all the others. It says in verses 11 through 18, chapter 20, but Mary stood weeping outside of the tomb, and as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" So she answers them, or she said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." I don't think she realized she was talking to angels. You know, there's two men in the tomb. I don't think she realized they were angels. But they're asking her, why are you crying? He's not here. Well, in her mind, somebody stole his corpse, and she's very upset. And she says, having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but did not want to believe it was Jesus. Why would she not want to believe it was Jesus? Because it's still kind of dark. And she's looking at this man, and I apologize. She probably can't see him very well. And she's wanted to be him so bad, but she's afraid to believe that that's him. And so Jesus says unto her, Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking? Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. Please don't mistreat my Lord's body. I will take it. I'll do whatever needs to be done with it. If you have moved it, tell me where you put it. I need to know. And so Jesus said unto her, and I want you to get this part. When your family speaks your name, you know it. And mothers and dads will understand this. I don't care if there is a room full of kids. If your child starts screaming, Mama, you know that's your kid. It doesn't matter if there's a whole bunch of them there. That kid is your kid, and you know that. So when he said her name, when he said Mary, immediately she knew who that was. That's not the gardener. That's my Lord. And so, she turned and she said to him in Aramaic, Rabboni, meaning it means teacher. She's excited. Rabboni, my master is back. And Jesus said to her, Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. So he's telling her, go back to my disciples and tell them I'm going to ascend. Let them know I have risen. I am alive. You saw me. So it says that Mary Magdalene went and announced to his disciples, I have seen the Lord, and that he had said these things to her. They didn't believe her. Remember that verse I was telling you I was going to read? All right, now I'm going to read it. Mark 16, verses 9 through 11. Now when he rose early on the first day of the week, Jesus, he first appeared to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. And she went and told those who had been with him as they mourned and wept. But when they heard he was alive and had been seen by her, they would not believe it. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I really do want responses, because I know what I think, but I would like to know what other people think. Why did they not believe her? She'd been with them since the beginning. She'd ministered to Jesus. She poured $216 worth of perfume on his feet. They knew she loved him. Why would they think what she was saying was a lie? Because that's all you could call it. They didn't believe her. In my mind, the reason why is because they still saw her as a harlot. Mankind had not forgiven her. Jesus had forgiven her. She was his daughter. He loved her. She had his forgiveness. He saw his daughter. What did they see? They saw a harlot. And in their minds, why would Jesus resurrect himself from the grave and the first person he talks to is a harlot? I think it is a beautiful example of how God sees past our sin. He sees past what we've done because he's wiped it away. The world doesn't. People that you are in your past, they know what you've done. And it's hard sometimes for them to see you differently. And sometimes they won't see it. They refuse. But I think that God chose her for a reason. I think he chose her because she is a fantastic redemption story. And God used women, Jesus used women as examples often. Enough that I think he made some of the guys a little uncomfortable, because the women, he allowed them to do ministering type things. So I think God sees the potential for spiritual growth. God sees outside of time who you can really be if you allow him to work in your life and grow you into a fantastic saint. Now, I'm not talking about sainthood like the Catholics. I'm talking about you are a warrior for God. You are willing to fight for what you believe in. You will stand on that rock and you will say, I will not be moved. You cannot shove this down my throat and expect me just to take it, because I won't. I think she was so grateful for the forgiveness that she received, and that she understood that forgiveness meant life, that she remained faithful to him from the moment of forgiveness until the end. We don't see her again, but in the verses that we see her, I feel like she's a very powerful example of redemption. You don't get much worse than that in the eyes of mankind. She was unclean. They looked at her like she was trash. They looked at her like she was not worth the time. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't well associated. She was a harlot. Most likely she was somebody that was on a back alley somewhere that did what she could to survive. But Jesus saw her differently. He didn't have to look at her flesh to see her. He looked past what the men were seeing, and he saw a soul that was desperate. He saw a soul that was crying out in need. And he answered that need with forgiveness and with mercy and with grace and with love. She's a beautiful story. So, that is Mary Magdalene. I am going to continue putting these on here. I think the next one I'm going to talk about is Miriam. I'm going to be hopping around quite a bit. And the reason why is because God gave them to me in a certain order, and that's the order I'm going to keep them in. The only one I took out of order was Eve, and it was because I felt like he redirected me to put her in the front. And so that was the first one that I did, is Eve. And I would really love it if you went back and you watched that one, because the story of Eve is amazing also. Each of these women, they just have very small snippets in the Bible. But like I said in the first video, 2 Timothy 3:16 says that everything that is in the Bible is meant to teach us something. This woman's name being mentioned repeatedly was meant to teach us something. And so I want to learn from her. But I would like to know, really, why do you think God came to her first? Think about it. Let me know. I love you. God bless you. I'm praying for everybody. And I would appreciate it if you kept me in your prayers, because it's just been a time. And, you know, with every new level, there's a new devil. So keep me in your prayers as well. God bless. Love you.